to help these informal businesses, not paying tax, not doing better than 2 men, 1 man, 5 people businesses, to grow out of that status into more formal, better organized, tax paying, and contributing to what you can calculate in your research. Are there any things we can do?
Absolutely, and let me just start by saying that we've been relatively impressed by this government's, this administration's desire to not go it alone. It is not possible for the government to provide for all by itself. You need a private sector buy-in. You need private sector participation. So I believe that key ministers, key members of this government are aware that you need to promote private sector participation. At the end of the day, you need to create incentives to formalize. One of those might be facilitated access to credit for SMEs. I know that Governor Sanusi is pushing banks to lend to these SMEs, and this is a very strong incentive to formalize yourself. Let's take the example of free trade zones being created in this country. We all know about Lucky Free Zone, for example. This creates an incentive for Nigerian SMEs to formalize, to set up shop in this free zone. They don't have to pay tax, and yet they can cater to major multinational corporations who set up shop in this free zone, and they're looking for subcontractors. They're looking for subcontractors not only to export, but also to sell to the domestic market. These are a couple of examples, but I believe that incentives are the way forward. Why would you do something if you didn't have the incentives to do so?
Let me drag into agriculture. Incidentally, I was a farm boy and would end up in the farm most likely. Now the report speaks about the agriculture being a fertile field, untapped with untapped natural capacity. What things did you encounter to grade agriculture as fertile field? Were there any pointers that it has potentials great enough to be called a fertile field?
Well, if we look at the figures from the Ministry of Agriculture, but also from international organizations like the FAO, it appears that over 60% of arable land, fertile land, as categorized by those experts in the agricultural sector, are unused. They are not cultivated. Just this statistic is particularly crucial for me as an analyst, but also for my team of analysts. And although I'm not the specialized agriculture analyst, I am aware of the conclusions in our research. Now, what will it take to produce on these fields? But not only produce in small holdings, but produce in efficient, in a modernized way. One might be foreign expertise, including best practices from places such as India, who have gone through a green revolution. Looking at the example of Bangladesh, which has brought in microfinance to facilitate access for farmers. Now, we have certain institutions in place in this country. For example, a plan to facilitate access to credit for farmers, people who, let's face it, Nigeria is predominantly rural to this day. Most of its population lives in the countryside. This is particularly important. The program of agricultural insurance to insure small farmers against natural disasters, disease. These institutions are in place, and they should be strengthened. There should be more credit flowing into this rural world, essentially, to allow them to cultivate these fields. Another issue is subsidizing access to the inputs, such as fertilizer, such as seeds, and so forth. And we know that the government has a program in place for this. Now, perhaps it's too early to tell, but at least we are seeing the policies being enacted that the government is talking about. They are at least signs of being on the right direction.
I want to play the role of somebody living illiterate, living in one of the remotest villages in Nigeria. This research, which we're discussing on television, seems to be a warehouse of what could be used to help him. Yet he doesn't know about it. Yet he can't get action to be taken on it. Yet the distribution of this document is with me, the elite in the studio. Isn't there a gap there? How do we get this now to help him get into what he needs, get him access to these facilities to be able to produce?
Let's face it, I mean, this is a high-level policy document. It is a high-level piece of research, so it may not be accessible to anybody. But this is the idea of bringing foreign analysts into this country, and as we do in every country of our operations, and collaborating with the local business community and the local political establishment. Our credibility as an independent research firm, a research organization, a publishing company, allows us to make certain policy recommendations identify certain challenges, and as you've said, bottlenecks, which we find in every one of our country of operations. The idea is then to promote debate, constructive debate, and move that debate in the right direction towards certain type of liberalization that will facilitate access to credit, as we were talking about, to SMEs, who are those people who are going to be creating jobs. So that is very much our aim, and indeed we're organizing a launch conference on the 8th of March at 5 p.m. at the Transcorp Hilton, to which I invite you to present the conclusions of our research and to engender a type of policy dialogue about this. Let's start talking about the real issues, basically.
Now, Khalil,
yes,
I'm looking at my producer who is doing like this. I want to get back to you quickly. In each of the countries that you have done research on, what has been the kind of reception the people have given to it, especially when you point out ugly things?
Yes. Because
the research can throw up very ugly things, though. What kind of reception do you get from those countries?
Ideally, what would be great and what would be actually amazing, make us believe in what we do, is a degree of government institutions would look at the findings and focus on areas that institutional strengthening can help the community prosper. And the foreign and the local community, the idea is with more investment, the local community will prosper as well. But so far, it's not a perfect world. Sometimes we've seen changes that have been
negative, kind of.
Not negative, but it's tough to say that saying that something needs to be changed or needs to be improved will cause any government to respond, because governments are large institutions with many cleavages, with many different interests. Exactly. But it's interesting to put this information out there, to put it in a way that is clear. And we are focused, as we told you before, this is for the investor and for the business community. And small changes, small reforms in government or in the way business is done in the country can have a very large impact on the population and on growth. And which is why Alex was mentioning institutional strengthening, lending on a bank level, especially to SMEs. Those sort of changes are the changes that can impact the largest number of people.
Now, Alex, we're talking about reception. Because in a country like Indonesia, for example, you've done a research on it.
Absolutely.
They must have read it. One or two other countries like that may also have read your report. What kind of reception? Negative, positive, or do the business communities take kindly to it, key into some of your findings, and create changes?
Let me be clear, there is no one-size-fits-all development model. There is no one-size-fits-all policy that you can just roll off the boat and implement as such. So our idea is not to come in here and preach. We are not that arrogant, and it is not our role or position to do so.
No.
The idea is to share best practices across all of our countries of operation. Say, listen, this brought a particularly successful outcome in Indonesia, for example. Microfinance banks. Microfinance banks are a very structured and efficient sector in Indonesia. They have the scope to fill that gap between the informal market and commercial banks who lend as of a certain amount. They are there for small-scale individual loans. Well, let us take that policy and say, well, what if we had a look at how we could implement it here in Nigeria? These are the kinds of things that we are looking at. The reception in the business community is, in general, particularly positive, actually. Not only for this kind of debate that is engenders, but also, as I said, you can be an expert in your sector of activity, but you may not know about what the guy next door is doing or thinking.
Great. Well, I've been speaking with two gentlemen, Alex Godi and Khalil Heber. Both of them are of the Oxford Business Group. They just published a report on Nigeria, the report Nigeria 2010. Well, it goes through all the sectors of the national economy. In fact, national life, politics, economy, banking, insurance, energy, ECOWAS, real estate, telecoms and IT, industry, capital markets, construction, and some interviews with some personalities. Let me, on your behalf, quickly thank Khalil for coming to Matters Horizon.
Thank you very much.
Alex,
thank you very much for your welcome.
Great. Well, we roll on shortly. I want to thank Alex and Godi on your behalf. What has the Federal Executive Council done to send people to Saudi Arabia, the fifth in a couple